Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 157th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And today's episode is all about celebrating the third birthday of Diverse Minds podcast. Can you believe it? A full 157 episodes from today, plus one bonus one. And so I wanted to share with you things I've learned from this year, from episodes 105 to 157. And recap and give you some stats. I know some listeners absolutely love this. So here we are, 3 years into the Diverse Minds podcast, and I can't quite believe it that I've kind of stuck with it and chipped away and done one a week. It's really flown by, and I'm really pleased to have another year under my belt. So firstly, in 2021, if you listened to the recap episode from 2 years of Diverse Minds podcast, I decided there were going to be 4 main themes within the podcast, and they were going to be race and race equity, mental health, Black global majority women, and to share my own personal journey. And this year I also decided to create mini series or themed topics each month, and I think this has worked really well to have a focus and enabled me to find guests and hone down on a particular theme within those 4 overarching themes I described. Also, Twitter has been really brilliant for finding guests. If you need guests, podcast hosts, if you tweet about who you need, I had absolutely loads of emails, and I had lots of people coming through to put themselves forward for the Arts and Wellbeing Month. So that's definitely a top tip. I didn't think anyone would respond because I don't really get much on Twitter, but that was really great. Last year, you'll know that I won Lindsay Ann Gold's Podcasting for Business Awards and the Best Diversity and Inclusion podcast. And this year I was really excited to be a judge. So it was great to listen to podcasts I didn't know were out there for the equality and for the diversity and inclusion category. And I'm pleased to say that I got to pass the baton on to fellow colleague and South Asian sister Rupinder Kaur, who runs Asian Women Mean Business and the Inspire Network. And do check out our episode together on creating safe spaces. And do check out our episode together, which was episode number 56, Creating Safe Spaces. So that was a real delight. And the award ceremony was held online again this year. So for those of you who like the stats and data, I'm pleased to say I'm currently on 24,592 downloads. So a huge thank you to everyone who's listened, who's supported, who's shared, who's tweeted, who's put me in various articles. I really, really do appreciate that. And top 10 episodes, this is always a really interesting one. So at number 10, we have Trauma Recovery Through Yoga with the wonderful Ava Ruby Williams. And that was a beautiful episode where Ava talks about yoga, somatic movement, how it can help our mental health and well-being, what we can do. And she also talks about her own lived experience of trauma and tragedy and how things have helped her, yoga has helped her, as well as what you can do. And we have a really great conversation about cultural appropriation in that one. She's such a brilliant person. Number 9 is episode 125, Doing Less, Being More with Karen Leibenguth. And Karen is a green space coach. So she does some great work around getting people into nature, how we can connect with nature, how it helps our well-being. And Karen is a very warm and calm soul. So do listen to that episode, especially if you need to chill out. And then at number 8 is Black Women in Menopause with the phenomenal Nina Kuipers. Nina runs Black Women in Menopause, a great organization. And she, again, such great insights and information specifically around menopause journey for Black women and other women of color. Then number 7, and this is an interesting one because this wasn't very popular when I first released it, but it is episode number 126, book review, my book review of The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. So I was quite surprised to see this because, as I said, when it was released, it was not very popular. But I think because it is such a thick book and it's quite a hard read, maybe people are tapping into the book review because they don't have time to read it. So I'm chuffed if you found that useful, do let me know. And then at number 6, it's episode 109, 8 Ways to Create Culturally Inclusive Meetings. So again, this is an episode from last year. I'm glad people are finding it helpful, and I talk about the different ways to make things culturally inclusive. Then at number 5, it's episode 108. What's the big deal with cultural appropriation? And that seems to have really built momentum as we've gone along. And again, I use some examples of the fashion industry or how yoga was banned, what people can do to, what's the difference between shopping for something you like and cultural appropriation? Because I often get asked that question. And then at number 4, it's the trailer for the Diverse Minds podcast, which was launched in July 2019. And I think this is the case because I actually took part in a podcast challenge this year. And one of the tips was to make sure that your podcast is on as many hosting sites as possible. So I did do that, and I upped the kind of number of hosting sites I'm on. So of course people listen to the trailer when you do that. And then at number 3, this again is really interesting that we have 7, 8, and 9 in the top 10. 107, 8, and 9 is the book review Culture Map by Erin Meyer. So I really love this book, so interesting. All about culture and her experience, the way in which she did her work and worked in corporate sector, and how she started to research culture. And then at number 2 is episode 37, and this is actually the most popular blog. This is the most number of hits I get on the website. A blog post about inclusive language. So the podcast is Why Bother with Inclusive Language? Does what it says on the tin, all about inclusive language, and ties together with my course about inclusive language. And then at number 1, and this is very interesting because this is recorded during lockdown and it just gains popularity, and my sense is that it's featured as a link in some courses because it's always seems to be particular colleges that are accessing this. But it's episode 39, Resilience and Mental Health, and that links to my online course, The Mentally Healthy Professional, and that is number 1. That has had the most downloads at 1,103. So I'm hoping you're finding things useful. I really love hearing from listeners. And remember, you can always leave me a voice note on my SpeakPipe. The link is in the show notes. And all it is you click onto SpeakPipe and you can just leave an anonymous voice note saying, I really enjoyed this. This was great. Could I have more of this? So I've tried to make it as easy as possible for you, but I think everyone seems a bit shy. Okay, so what about countries? So at number 10, we have Italy with the 10th most downloads. Then at number 9 is Germany, tied with actually number 8, which is the Netherlands. And then at number 7 is France. Number 6, Australia, which I find very fascinating. Number 5, Ireland. Number 4, Spain. Number 3, Canada. Number 2, United States. And of course, number 1, UK, because my content is very UK focused. And in terms of the listening methods as well, I'm just going to do the top 5 because I think we'll be here all day otherwise. But number 5 is Overcast, followed by Chrome, and then Simplecast, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So 38.5% of you are listening on Spotify. So that's great. And I know some people have actually found me from Spotify because I've had emails from people, which is really nice. And then my wonderful guests. So it always surprises me that my episodes are more popular than my guests, because I think my guests are brilliant. But I've had a real privilege to speak to such phenomenal people. And if you had to listen to last week's episode, The Power of Arts Therapy with Rebecca West, she is such a deep person giving such good insights. Arts in Practice with Erin Desi, Black Leadership with Busayo Abidakun. I just can't. Yeah, I just feel so lucky for the guests that I have. And I also got to interview those of you who are drum and bass fans, the wonderful Mike Kiss, who gave me his time and really opens up on the show about his lived experience of anxiety and his journey and the journey that he had to go through. So very lucky. And actually that was through Twitter as well. I've had the wonderful Maya Goodfellow, Dr. Maya Goodfellow, who, is incredibly popular. She is a Twitter celebrity. Alan Reed from the Equal Group talking about his lived experience of neurodivergence and coming out as queer. I'm so grateful that people feel able to talk about these really big things because it's not easy. Play for Adults with music therapist Crystal Luke Worrell. Again, she was very open about the things that she's been through. And all my guests, I've had people from all over the world as well. And it's just been such an honor. And I can't thank people enough for all the time and the attention that they've given. So do check out some of those episodes. And then podcasts that I've been on, I've actually been on quite a few podcasts this year, which has been really lovely to be invited. So my most recent is the Mental Podcast, which has won the British Podcasting Awards with Bobby Temps, talking about my sort of first memory of mental health, well-being, racism and mental health in the workplace. I spoke to Ella Sangera from Virtually Thrive about losing your identity as a mother, even as a non-parent, about the journey, what people can do. The And Happiness podcast with Claudia Mitura, again, talking about identity, culture in the workplace, how that can contribute to your happiness. Tactical Magic with the wonderful Molly Mandelberg, and she actually is based in California. And we talked about your well-being in your business and running your business with your well-being in mind. A Life Up to Your Dreams with the wonderful Luana Bossetti. She has a very interesting podcast. And for those of you who like to think about goals and dreams and achieving them in quite an organic, spiritual way, that's definitely the podcast for you. I was also on the Metro's Mentally Yours podcast with Yvette Castor and Elaine Scott, talking about culture, mental health, and bullying in the workplace. The 1 in 5 podcast, Leading a Life Without Children with Geeta Pense, and that was very popular on LinkedIn, actually, talking about a life of no regrets, about not having children and why I made those choices. And the Tune Creators podcast, talking about musicians, how they can support their mental health, with my own podcast producer, Xavier Ume, and that was really great. And I think it's encouraged Xavier to get more health and wellness coaches on, so do check out that podcast too. So as it is the birthday episode, I'd love to gift you a power hour worth £150 with me. So if you want to enter the competition, I'd love it if you could subscribe or follow my podcast, leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast from, and share it on your social media and tag me in. If you could use the hashtag Diverse Minds Podcast, then I can find the shares, and it also helps me to know who's in the competition. So do subscribe, follow my podcast, type something on social media, tag me in, and use the hashtag Diverse Minds Podcast. The other reason I started a podcast is if you can't afford to purchase any training, or you don't have any control over the corporate purse strings of your workplace, I try to provide tools, tips, and support so that anyone can find my content and access it. So to that extent, I love hearing from listeners, and I'd love to know what else you would like to hear. If you've got any guests that you want to be put forward, I do plan the podcast in September for 12 months going forward, usually, but there is sort of leeway for a few things. And sometimes if someone really has a burning desire to hear a particular guest, I will try my best. So what are the key lessons I have learned? Well, always, number one is gratitude. Gratitude to everyone who's listened, who comments, who messages me, whether it's one podcast for the year or whether it's all 52. I'm truly delighted that it's been of use to you. I would love to say, I have 10,000 downloads a week, but unless you're a celebrity and you've got a team of a production team and an advertising team behind you, I know that chances are slim. So I do feel very proud of the 24,500 nearly downloads, or just over downloads, that I've received in 3 years, because it is a slow burn. If you're not a celebrity, you're not going to get the traction that you get when people know you. Plus, I know my podcast isn't for everyone. If you listen to the episode I did about how true crime podcasts can get us to understand bias, you'll know that, of course, true crime podcasts have us on the edge of our seat, whereas I think my podcasts are not really like that. So I do appreciate that it's not going to be for everyone. It's been great meeting and connecting with such a variety of people that I've never met face to face, but I do feel quite connected with now. So again, huge gratitude for that. And thank you again to all the guests for their time and making space for that. Of course, if you're unsure about working with me, if you think I'm not sure this is going to be the right approach for us, it's a great way to get to know me and how I do things, and decide if my way of working fits you. Going forward, I am going to carry on with those 4 overarching themes I shared with you around mental health, Black global majority women, race equity, and personal journey. And we're going to have more exciting guests, juicy content, and carrying on with the themed month, so you can dip in and access what interests you. It would be great if you spread the word and share the podcast with anyone you think would like to get involved, and do get involved in the competition. So all you need to do is leave me a review, share it on social media, tag me in, and you will be entered into it. And of course, why not leave me an anonymous voice note on my SpeakPipe? Please let me know what you'd like to hear more of. And that link is bit.ly/SPKP DMP. So please do. I really love hearing from people. You can, of course, email me at Leyla, Leyla at diverseminds.co.uk. And don't forget, all you have to do is subscribe, follow my podcast, leave a review, share it on social media, tag me in to be entered into winning a £150 Power Hour with me to talk about anything you'd like to. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, getting a glimpse into what's been going on over the last year. I hope you'll join me for the next year of the podcast, as long as it may continue. And again, thank you so much for being listeners, all your support, your ideas, your innovation, because this podcast wouldn't exist without you. Cheesy but true. And don't forget to take care and stay tuned. We're going to kick off September with Personal Development Month. I've got some great guests and topics to keep you entertained. Until then, everyone, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.